You got what you wanted, and then nothing. Maybe it was the promotion, the relationship, the new apartment, the number on the scale. You reached it, and somewhere inside, you expected the feeling to arrive, that quiet fullness, that sense of finally. But it didn't come. Or it came and left before you could hold it. And now you're standing in the middle of something you once called a dream, wondering why it feels like just another Tuesday. This isn't ingratitude. It isn't laziness. It isn't some flaw in your character. But it is something. There's a specific kind of emptiness that shows up not when your life is falling apart, but when it's going exactly the way you planned. You scroll, you achieve, you consume, you experience, and each time there's a brief brightness and then a dimming, like a match that burns and burns fast and leaves you in a slightly darker room than before. Psychologists have a name for part of this. It's called hedonic adaptation. The brain, in its remarkable efficiency, treats novelty as information and then normalizes it. What was thrilling becomes ordinary. What was extraordinary becomes background. Not because you're broken, because you're human. The neuroscience here is precise. Your brain runs on a system governed by dopamine. But dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure. It is the chemical of anticipation. It fires when you're pursuing something. It quiets when you arrive, which means the architecture of your brain is literally designed to make arrival feel like loss. The chase is the reward. The destination is the withdrawal. Take a breath here, because this changes something important. If nothing feels like enough, it doesn't mean you are ungrateful. It doesn't mean you are broken. It doesn't mean you want too much. It means you are running on a very old operating system in a world it was never designed for. Your brain evolved in scarcity, in a world where desire kept you alive, where wanting more meant finding food, warmth, belonging. But now you live in a world of abundance, endless content, constant achievement, infinite comparison. The seeking never has to stop, so it doesn't. And the machinery of wanting, which once had natural limits, now runs continuously, with no silence, no saturation, no rest. You are not too much. You are a survival machine deployed in the wrong century. Here's the deeper mechanism worth understanding. The brain has two competing systems that most people never consciously recognize. The first is the wanting system, driven by dopamine, driven by the future. It says more, next, better, again. It lives in the limbic system, one of the oldest parts of your brain, ancient, powerful, loud. The second is the savoring system, driven by presence, driven by now. It says this, here, enough. It lives largely in the prefrontal cortex, the quiet, newer part of your brain, slower, softer, easily overridden. In most modern lives, the wanting system runs at full volume, and the savoring system barely gets a signal. Because savoring requires something the modern world almost never offers: stillness. There's a concept in psychology called attentional narrowing. When you are constantly stimulated, your attention becomes a spotlight, always pointed forward toward the next thing. But the experience of enough doesn't live in the spotlight. It lives in the peripheral light, in the background, in the unhurried moment.
You can't find it by looking harder. You can only find it by widening. So how do you actually work with this? Not against your brain, with it. Here are 5 principles grounded in what we know about the mind. The first, interrupt the escalation cycle. Psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky's research shows that variety, not more, sustains positive emotion. The brain doesn't need bigger, it needs different. When you notice the dimming after arrival, rather than immediately seeking something larger, introduce variation, a new route, a different ritual, a small, unexpected pleasure. Small novelty resets the baseline more sustainably than large escalation. The second, practice arrival. There is a difference between being somewhere and arriving somewhere. Most people pass through their own lives like a traveler reading about the city from inside the taxi. Arrival, in the psychological sense, means deliberately marking a moment as now. It can be as simple as a pause, a breath, a conscious acknowledgement. I am here. This is real. I did this.
Research in positive psychology calls this savoring, and it has measurable effects on well-being, precisely because it activates the prefrontal circuit that the wanting system tends to suppress. The third, audit your comparison inputs. The brain computes enough, not in absolute terms, but in relative ones. Leon Festinger's social comparison theory, developed in the 1950s, is more relevant now than it has ever been. You are constantly, unconsciously benchmarking yourself against the highlights of everyone else's trajectory, which means your sense of enough is being recalibrated upward continuously by information that was never meant for your nervous system. Reducing comparison inputs isn't weakness or avoidance, it is neurological hygiene. The fourth, complete the loop. One underappreciated reason things don't feel like enough is that we rarely close the loop on what we've done. The wanting system is always open, always pointing forward. But without deliberate reflection, the brain doesn't fully process accomplishment. It just moves the goalpost and starts again. Journaling, conversation, review, these aren't productivity tools. They are the brain's way of digesting experience. Without digestion, nothing nourishes. The fifth, redefine the goal. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying the moments when humans feel most alive. His finding was counterintuitive. The deepest satisfaction doesn't come from having. It comes from engaging, from being fully absorbed in something that stretches but doesn't break you. He called it flow, and flow is not a destination, it is a texture of experience. The shift from wanting outcomes to valuing engagement is one of the most quietly transformative moves the human mind can make. Here is the single mental model that holds all of this together. Think of your inner life as a river. Most people are trying to stop the river, to build a dam, hold what they have, feel satisfied with the still water. But rivers are not meant to be still, they are meant to flow. The suffering doesn't come from the movement, it comes from fighting the movement, from mistaking the flowing for emptiness. Enough is not a destination downstream, it is the quality of your attention while you are in the current. When you practice arrival, you are learning to feel the river. When you interrupt escalation, you are choosing depth over distance. When you close the loop, you are honoring where you've already been. And when you redefine the goal, you stop trying to dam the river and learn instead to move with it. You are not failing to be satisfied. You are learning what satisfaction actually is. It was never the summit. It was never the number, the title, the thing. It was always the quality of attention you brought to the landscape while you were climbing. The brain you carry is ancient. Its hunger is not a bug. It is the engine that built civilizations. But you get to choose what you feed it. And the deepest nourishment has never been more. It has always been here. Fully, quietly. Enough.